strictly maintain your financial discipline among the clubs, among the Rotaract clubs. So it's extremely important that we are well equipped, informed, and have adequate knowledge regarding these financial practices, policies that are to be followed in Rotaract. So on behalf of the Rotaract District Steering Committee for the years 2020-21, I would like to once again very warmly welcome all of you to this training session on Rotaract financial management. But before we begin, let me just quickly mention that we will be having a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions, if you have doubts to clarify, drop a message in our chat box and the question will be forwarded to the speakers during the Q&A session. Right, now, without further ado, let me invite the Rotaract District Treasurer for the year 2020-21, Rotarian Rotaract past President Insaf Ismail, formally welcome you all. Over to you.
Thank you, Satma. Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the District Steering Committee, first and foremost, it is my privilege to warmly welcome our District Governor, Rotarian past President Ajit Veerasinghe, and our Rotary Youth Service Chair, Dr. Rohan Tatukorla, who has joined us today. I would also take this opportunity to welcome our keynote speaker, Mr. Sujeeva Rajapaksa, and our panelists for the evening, PDG Krish Rajendran and PDG Tissa Bandarnayaka, along with Rotarian Harsha Raja. It gives me great pleasure to also welcome our presidents, secretaries, treasurers, and the fellow Rotaractors. Thank you for joining in. The objective of today's session and the panel discussion is to make our Rotaractors understand the importance of financial management and the mandatory requirements that were imposed on the clubs after the recent changes in the Rotary Code of Policies. As you all know, after Elevate Rotaract, the changes that were made, we noticed that the clubs that were not, the expected things were not maintained in the clubs. So as a movement, we need to have financial transparency and follow high standards in managing finances. So we have put together a very comprehensive agenda for you all to understand, refine your current practices in the club. We will close off, as Satma said, with a Q&A session with a allied set of panelists with two past district governors who are here to help us out with any concerns that are required. So just like Satma said, here it is the chance to get your clarifications from past two district governors. So, and also I would like to add, if any presidents are not here today, please pass the messages, the information gathered today and pass it on to your club. So guys, sit back and enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Rotaract Insaf. I would now like to invite the District Rotaract representative for the year 2020-21, Rotarian Rotaract past President Kasun Sigera, to address the gathering.
Thank you very much, Fatma. A very good evening to all of you present here. PDG Krish Rajan, PDG Tissa, Rotarian Harsha, and then our Youth Services Director, District Youth Services Director, Rotarian Dr. Rohan Tatukorala, and our keynote speaker, Mr. Sujeeva Rajapaksa, all the presidents of Rotaract clubs of our district. A very good evening once again. I'm not going to take much of time because we have an elite panel of panelists here to address all of you today and to educate all of you about proper conduct of financial management and also financial best practices. We, as a professional youth movement that has almost exceeded 7,500 members in terms of our membership, and which has expanded drastically and exponentially as the largest youth movement of Sri Lanka. It is definitely important that we abide by best practices, and we are accountable for the best interest of all our stakeholders. So, which is why we wanted to have this session where we educate our Rotaract clubs and where we make sure that our Rotaract clubs know what it means to conduct themselves, financially ethical, and then also they have the adequate information. So we have an extreme extremely active set of presidents and secretaries and treasurers who are joining today. So please make sure that you remain all throughout the next 2 hours. We have some amazing, speakers who are lined up, the best uh, in the industry, addressing all of you. So have yourself a fabulous rest of the evening. Please make sure that you clarify all your doubts, because we have observed that there are so many areas that people, our contractors need improvements in terms of finances. So please make sure that you clarify all your, all your doubts, and enjoy the rest of the proceedings. I should definitely thank PDG Krish, and PDG Krista, and Rotarian Harsha, and DG Ajit, and all our Rotarians who are here, who have been a massive pillar of success and strength in terms of organizing this, understanding the importance of and the gravity of this training. So while I thank everyone who's here, please make sure that you get the best out of this training, and you carry it forward and implement it in all our district clubs, all the clubs in our district. So thank you very much. Have yourself a fabulous rest of the evening. Please enlighten yourselves and your members about what we discuss here, and let's keep on striving at them. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rotaract Hasan, for sharing your thoughts with us. Up next, we have a very well-known personality, winning many accomplishments in his tenure at Rotary, including Best Rotarian, multiple Paul Harris Fellow Awards, and being a major donor of Rotary. He's currently the CEO and Director of CIC Feeds Limited, CIC Wet Care Limited, CIC Poultry Farms Limited, and CIC Biosecretary Breeder Farms Limited. He has a very diverse set of skills, from being in the disciplinary committee of Sri Lanka Cricket, President of Veterinary Pharmaceutical Importers Association, Vice President of the Gampaha District Association, and many more other leadership positions. I would now like to cordially invite the Rotary District Governor for the years 2020-21, Rotarian past President Ajit Veersinghe, to share his views on the importance of financial management as Rotaractors. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Satma, for the introduction. Good evening, everyone. District Rotaract Representative Kasun Segera, PDG, that is past District Governor Tissa Bandaranayaka, and past District Governor Krish Rajendran, Youth Service Chair Dr. Rohanta, and keynote speaker Sujiva, Harsha, and all my dear Rotarians and Rotaractors. Let me first of all thank and commend Kasun for organizing this fantastic, very, very vital, timely, he had done that, this meeting, which I consider is the backbone of our whole Rotary fraternity. Because the finance is the key area that a lot of conflicts and issues comes. Because most of the time we don't take it so seriously, because we may not misappropriate funds. So therefore we take it easy. The question is, we must understand that this is not our funds. We are not managing our own funds, which we have the freedom to do if it is so. So here it is someone's funds, public fund. So we have to be accountable, as it was said earlier. So we have to be very, very transparent in what we do. You know, I have seen, even in the Rotary clubs, no one misappropriate funds in most of the cases, but there are multiple issues. Within the club, some people, they are disheartened because there is no transparency. In fact, some people leave Rotary. They don't say, because when you bring a friend, they don't say, because of this I am going. Because they only know their money is given, but they don't see how it is counted, how it is spent. So they feel, something different, fishy, so that they tend to leave the organization. So therefore, the stewardship, the financial discipline, transparency, it is utmost important, not only in social organizations, even in our personal capacity, because all of us and this young generation will surely get involved in other organization management. So we must understand, if you all are working in finance field or even in the other fields in organizations, you know that how you manage the funds. You know how you are accountable when you even draw some funds, or when you are claiming something, because there's a way of doing it. And you may just start doing to follow the procedures, but you will realize that it is someone else's. Therefore, you have to have the proper procedures in place. So similarly, it is not because of a requirement, I believe. We must make sure that we always follow the proper procedures. It is very great that all the financial experts are here. So, Kasun, great of you for inviting Sujiva, then PDJ Tissa and PDJ Krish. You have all the experts around. So I'm sure today all the Rotaractors can gain lots of information, and also with the stewardship stories from Harsha, you will understand how other organizations and Rotary itself doing it, and why is it important, and what is your responsibility as a Rotaractor, not only because of the district or the RI is asking the audited reports. No, every individual is responsible and accountable for others' funds. So maybe I can see there are about 166 members. That's a great achievement. Kasun, from your side, because as Kasun said, make sure you continue to be here until the closure. You will surely gain. It is not only for the betterment of Rotary, but it is for your own benefit. You will learn lots of things which you have not heard. You may do it as a practice, but when you learn today, you will understand the importance of financial discipline and the transparency of financial management transactions. So, Kasun, I will leave with the finance experts who will really talk in detail about the importance of this area. And I wish every one of you will be successful after listening to all these important talks in your personal careers as well as in your club management. Thank you very much, Kasun. Thank you very much, everyone. Good evening.
Thank you, Rotary District Governor Rotarian Ajit, for enlightening us with your valuable input. We highly appreciate it. Next, we have another important personality to share his thoughts. He's currently the CEO and president of Rotaract Sri Lanka, Maldives, and Pakistan, which is a global artificial intelligence company. He has held many board directorship positions in renowned companies such as Hemas Holdings, Sri Lanka Tea Board, Sri Lanka Export Development Board, Industrial Development Board, and many more. He's also held positions as the chairman of Satosa Lanka, the director for Sri Lanka for World Expo Milan, Italy, chairman of Sri Lanka Tourism, and many more positions in over 7 other companies. So inviting the Rotary District Youth Services Chair for the year 2020-21, Rotarian past President Dr. Rohanta Atukorodo. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate for this invite that has been extended. I'm sorry I'm outdoor because my cousin died out of COVID in Dubai. He was working for HSBC, and we just buried his ashes right now. So I'm outstation. But I'd like to congratulate DRR Kasun for organizing this event, and for DG Ajit for the support extended from the district. And I sincerely thank PDG Krish for championing this. I really thank the whole district finance committee and the fantastic speakers that are here. I really like to thank my good friend Sujiv Rajapaksa, the chairman of People's Bank, and the director of BDO, who consented to be the keynote speaker, and all the other speakers. Thank you very much. I got 2 points that I like to share with you. The first is that the reason why we do all these kinds of things like Rotary and Rotaract and Interact is because we want to learn the proper governance of running an organization. And then what happens is that when we get that training, later on, when we grow up and we take higher responsibilities, And when you're under severe pressure, it is only then that you realize the training that you get, that interact at when you were a prefect at school, and when you were at Rotaract, and what the training you get as a Rotarian helps. I mean, until you are tested, you will never know the importance of this training. Now, that's point number one. Point number two is that a lot of people talk about governance. A lot of people talk about being inclusive. A lot of people talk about following procedures. But I'm saying with a lot of responsibility that, you know, um, uh, I'm a person who has been tested on governance. You know, in 2004, when I was appointed as the chairman of the Export Development Board, you know, we were struck with a tsunami, and then, you know, within a year we built exports to be 6 billion. And once we have achieved that task, I get a bill for $1 million in terms of moving funds into Singapore, and I refuse to sign it. And, you know, I mean, when you're a chairman of a premium organization like that, you know, you're in the papers every day. And when I got this, the first thing I said is, I'm sorry, I'm going to resign and move out. You know, I'm not going to do it. And I just took a piece of paper, signed, and the next thing I knew was that I had gone down, and I just left the job. And, you know, simultaneously, I was also working for a Unilever subsidiary based out of Mumbai. And I called them up and said, guys, I done this because I believe in governance. And it was not only just 2 days, right? It was just 2 days. You know, I remember I got a call from the presidential secretariat, and I was told by the treasury secretary that, you know, you're not going anywhere. You're going to head the National Council for Economic Development, and you're going to report to the president and Dr. PB. I mean, you know, we went on to serve the UN, you know, and subsequently again, we were called back to serve as chairman of Sri Lanka Tourism. You know, so the point I'm just trying to say as my second point is that, you know, when you stand up for governance, you can be unpopular. You take a hit on your brand. You take a hit on with your relations, but then it's a training that you get to stand out. It's a character that you have because of the training you got at Rotaract, at Rotary, and that's what keeps you to be instead to say, I'm going to be financially strong. I'm not going to wilt. And then, you know, that's how it you that's what you mean by this training. So when I realized that there were certain lapses in the past, and it was coming in this year when DRR Kasun was going through the financials last year. I told DRR Kasun, it's our duty to train people, you know, give that exposure that sometimes we didn't have. And I sincerely thank how we have, you know, we have put this program together. And I think it's an excellent program that we should even do with Interact, and maybe subsequently at a higher level. I mean, the third point I like to share with you is that, you know, when you stand for governance, you suddenly find there are a lot of like-minded people who tend to flock together. And my good friend Sujiva Rajapaksa is one of them. You know, when I realized that, you know, I stood up for governance, one day central bank called both of us and said, we want you to be on the board of the finance. We want you to correct it. We know there are a lot of governance issues there. And we were under severe pressure at that board. For 3 years we turned around that company. And that's how, you know, the kind of strength that we have to stand today to say that we are not worried and we don't wilt to standing up for governance. So it's actually an honor to speak to you all. And we continue to be standing in governance. In 2017, I was appointed as chairman of Lanka Satusa. We turned around within 7 months, 32 billion company. And then again, we again stood up for governance. And I think that's what keeps us instead. So I'm so honored to address you. Don't be scared. I know there are times when when you're under severe pressure, but that's when your character comes out. So I like to introduce my good friend Sujiva Rajapaksa. He's the past president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants. He's an international licensed partner ILP for BDO partners. He's he's an outstanding person, a board member of Sri Lanka Accounting Auditing Standards Monitoring Council. He is a member of the University of Sri Javadrupura. He's a member of the Monetary Consultative Committee, Central Bank Commission, member of the Commission of the Exchange Commission for Sri Lanka Pay. And I can just go on talking about him. Today, he's the chairman of the People's Bank, and that's the kind of responsibility he has. And something which is unique is that, this morning at about 10 o'clock, I called and said, Suji, I want you to speak to the youngsters about governance. And he's right now heading this huge organization with about 150 billion. He said, Ronta, I'm at a training program for them, but I'm going to take 10 minutes off and speak. And that is the kind of like-minded people that are there in this country for governance. So I'm so honored. I wish everybody all the best. Please take this training program very seriously. It's nothing to do with Rotaract, guys. This is a training for life. Thank you very much and all the very best. Over to you, Sujiva.
Hi, Rohanta. Rohanta, can you see me?
Yes, we can see.
Hi, it is, sir. Good to see you. Actually, I'm in Kandy because I came with my People's Bank, the key staff, about 70 people, to have a residential workshop here, because we are discussing about next year's budgets and strategy and many more things, especially as you are aware, we are in turbulence, the times. Then when Rohanta spoke to me, actually not 10 o'clock, I think would have been about 2 o'clock. He wanted me to speak 10 minutes about financial management. I said, okay, I don't mind. But I never knew that this is around, because then I would have definitely declined, because you are much qualified than me to talk about financial discipline. I heard that there are a fairly good number of young entrepreneurs, probably people are around. So I'll be extremely happy, and thank you thank you, Rohanta, for inviting me. I'll see what I could do, especially looking at from practical aspect, which we both, this and me, have learned over last couple of few decades. Financial management is anyway, because I'm not going to do a kind of a lecture, but let me see, there are a few important areas, because now financial management is the cornerstone of anything. Why do I say that? Because without financial management, you can't run a proper organization. People now need to understand. Now there are two aspects. Now financial management. Now when you become an owner of an entity, you feel that it's my business. It's my you are trying to take the ownership of that particular entity. But a lot of people fail when they understand that the owner or the shareholder and the company are two different things. Because a lot of financial mismanagement is taking place because of the fact that they don't understand about their fiduciary duty towards the entire stakeholder base, including customers, employees, suppliers, whoever it is you call. So therefore, please understand, ladies and gentlemen, you are just an investor of a company, and you are not the total. You can't do the things the way that you expect to do, which is very important. Because when I run this bank, other than my practice, when I run this bank for last 1 year, especially people, everyone, every business in kind of a distress mode. And when there are a large number of customers who come to see me, when I look at them, when I look at their requirements, when I especially look at their financials, I can see that there are a large amount of financial mismanagements have taken place. Why do I say that? We need to understand when we become the, let us say, shareholders or owners or even finance, head of finance or the financial guys, we need to do the right thing. Because Tissa Bandaranayak, who is here now, because they were our role models when we were, the trainees. We have seen how they have been doing. So you need to make sure you do the right thing at the right time and never ever compromise your integrity. That's important for any reason. Sometimes you are tempted. You are tempted when you have little amount of money, when you make a decent amount of profits and things like that. You want to take some money out from the business. Of course, you may feel that if you are the sole proprietor or a partner or partner or a major shareholder, you may want to take some money out. You can take that money out because you need to make sure that you make profits for you to take money out, not from the some people feel that the moment that you have fairly large amount of top line, when I say top line, the turnover, they feel this is my profit. No, that's not the case. You have to look at the profit and see how much of profit can you take out from the business. Why do I say that? Because if you look at the balance sheet, there are large amount of liabilities, large amount of provisions that you have made. Without making those, the commitments, if you are going to take that money out, I'm sure that, you are heading for a disaster. So therefore, please make sure that you need to control your temptation. You need to control your own feelings. So therefore, if you want to make sure that you have to have a growth in your business, continuous growth, yes, you need to have a financial discipline. There are important things in financial discipline I should take you through, because if you don't have a proper financial discipline, number one is definitely there's a huge tendency to fail your business as against the people who are having a better financial management, because you won't know where you are heading. You don't know where is your position today. What is your total asset, total liabilities, whether you have done, whether you have, made a profit or loss, and how are you going to face for future challenges. Now, especially these times, you understand, we won't know. Nobody will be able to prepare a proper cash flow forecast as of today content. That's what we are doing here. As one of the largest banks, we have been tremendously pressurized by every corner. So therefore, now we are trying to see how are we going to face. If we don't have a proper financial management with figures, with forecasts, realistic forecasts, then we are not going to go anywhere. So I urge each one of you, the participants here, make sure that you prepare proper forecast. Then it's very easy to drive. So you will know where you stand. The other one is, when you have a financial management, proper financial management plan, it will definitely help you to drive it properly and make sure that you retain some kind of experts. Because when I meet customers, they come and give us account set, audited account set. But when I look at that, since I know my onions, I used to ask you a few questions, then I know that these are all cooked up accounts. These are sometimes certified by so-called auditors. But when I ask, look here, have you got a have you got a true set of accounts? Yes, they give a true set of accounts, which are really, the figures are much better than what is given in the audited account. So you have to be truthful to yourself. And if you want to pay, if you are expected to pay little amount of taxes and other levies that you are supposed to pay as a responsible businessman, citizen, so which is very important. And my humble advice to these young entrepreneurs, if I believe that they are there, and make sure that don't retain just half-baked people. Get the best advice, but when you get the best advice, you must be able to listen to the best advisor. Because there are, in Sinhala terms, we say, Godaveddu, there are people who will come and tell you, don't pay that amount of taxes, you simply pay little amount of taxes and try to evade taxes and go not to fall in line with these statutory requirements. But end of the day, you are going to be in trouble. The moment that you want to obtain a loan, when you go to a bank, so banker will say, sorry, because you have been incurring losses. But because those are cooked up accounts, not the real account. So therefore, make sure that you pay proper taxes. Because if you have a proper set of accounts, it will be very easy for you to access for finance. Without any difficulty, you can go to a bank and say, here is guy, this is my audited account, so please give me. You can demand some kind of, the facilities, and also you are in a better position to negotiate with even the bank. That's important. Apart from that, there are another advantages that will certainly, when you have a proper financial management, that will help you to reduce the cost of your production, cost of your service. You will know where unnecessary cost is going to be. So those things can be properly controlled. If you don't have, you won't know where you are heading. If you don't have a proper cost of, the funding program, you won't know what the cost of fund is going to be in your production of, providing services or cost of production of your whatever you produce. Because that's very important to make sure, because in today's context, cost is your key. If you can't control the cost, because you are going to be out from the market, I think that's very, very important for you. Other thing is, as a citizen, you would always like to do something ethical. That ethical practices, ethical business is very important for you to say that, look, yeah, I have done my part. That is what I always say, that don't ever compromise your integrity. That's important. How much time do I have, have I got? Rohanta, how many minutes have I got?
Go ahead, Sujiva. You finish your stint.
Right. Okay. Other thing is, when you are going to have, now I have seen, I can now take you through some practical aspects, because there are businesses where when they have money, without looking at the liability side, without looking at the bank loan payments and things like that, they take this money out and go for whatever or it could be a Prado, and then you go and invest for unnecessary things. But you need to make sure that you can't take that money out, because you need to make sure that you take only the the entitled quantum of your profit out, and then you invest. Another thing is, always you have to keep something back with the business for rainy days. Now this is absolutely, this whole year we have been having rainy days. So a lot of people who come to bank, when I look at their balance sheets and things like that, they have taken entire money out by way of dividends and things like that. When I ask, look here, okay, I will give you a loan, can you also bring something back, what you have withdrawn from the business? They say, sorry, we don't have that money. So imagine. So therefore, make sure that you have to build up your capital in the business. It's not the initial capital, $1 million or two, what you have done. Over a period of time, you have done a business and you have accumulated good amount of profits. Make sure that you retain some kind of profits also in the business for future expansion or future, some kind of emergency, which is important. Another thing is, tone at the top is absolutely important, because people are looking at you as an entrepreneur, you as a finance guy. So do the right thing. Don't leave, from the accepted accounting principles and things like that. Do the right thing, then you will never fail. You will be recognized, regarded, rewarded as a person, a real entrepreneur. I think that's what I need to tell Rohanta and Tissa. Of course, we both can lecture the hours and days about the financial management, but most of the cases I have seen now today, you can see there are large conglomerates in this country, or sometimes there are businesses who have been really working well, but tomorrow you can see they are going down the drain. Why is that? Totally because of the mismanagement. Now, Rohanta was talking about, we both were sitting in the finance company, and that is purely because the central bank wanted us to resurrect the company, which we really did, but then later it became an issue. But during our tenure, we were able to reduce a 200 billion monthly loss to be brought down to 65 million loss per month. Imagine, that is because we brought governance, we brought financial management. So that means the previous people have really mismanaged the whole thing. So that is how you had to look at. And one fine day, you will be very happy if you can have a proper, but it's a bittersweet experience kind of thing, because sometimes you may feel, why the hell, why should we do that? No, this is my own business, I can do whatever, this is my car, my petrol. No. But if you want to grow the business, if you want to get to the next level, one fine day, if you are thinking about listing the company in the Colombo Stock Exchange, you need to have proper accounts and proper governance and proper controls. So please look at that. I am sure that, there are about 192 people, participants, and each one of you, please make sure that you are going to get into the next level over a period of time. For that, I think you need to have number one in any place is, with all due respect to other disciplines, but it is the finance discipline that you need to have, financial management discipline that you need to make sure that you have it. So I think with that, let me conclude, but I'm prepared to take up any kind of questions or anything. This, I'm sure that this will be able to answer all the questions. And if there's anything, tell me. Rohanta, thank you very much, and stay safe.
Thank you, sir, for taking the time off your busy schedule to share your valuable input with us, Rotaract. So it's an absolute honor to have you, as personalities such as yourself, here with us. So thank you once again for taking the time. We did receive a couple of questions, but due to the time restriction, we're just limited to 1 or 2 questions. So I'll just slot in a 2-part question. Yeah, so one of the questions is that what is an annual budget, like how you define a budget and how it relates to an audit. And also part 2 of the question would be the processes, or like the systems that goes before you go to an year-end audit, right? So what is an annual budget, how it relates to an audit, and the other processes established before the year-end audit.
Thank you. In simple terms, now budget, you take, you as a person, you are getting monthly, let us say 100,000 rupees. And you will certainly make sure that you have these expenses. Also, you will also need to save at least, let us say, about 20,000 rupees. So that is budget for yourself. That is budget for your wallet. So same manner, we also need to have a budget for our own business. The business budget is, there are 2-3 folds. One is you have to prepare your profit and loss account. What is my income and expenditure or profit and loss account that I should have? How much of quantity that I should produce? How much of quantity that I should sell? And if it is a service organization, what kind of service I should do? And what's my bottom line, top line? And to achieve that, to achieve that top line, what's going to be my expenditure, and what's going to be my profit? And that is one side, simple terms, within 2 minutes. The other side is what's going to my, because the same manner you have your income and expenditure, you also have your assets and liabilities. What's going to be my total assets at end of the year? What's going to be my liabilities end of the year? Generally, budgets are prepared for a year, financial year. In Sri Lanka, financial year is, that is from 1st April to 31st March. And some cases, even places like large corporates and large banks, and we have monthly budgets as well. So that is in simple term, it's a budget. But where the audit is concerned, if it is a limited liability company, I must tell you, it's a statutory obligation for you to get your financials audited. Whereas if it is a partnership or a proprietor is concerned, you don't have to. Audit, you can't simply get ready at the end of the financial year. It's a yearly process. You need to make sure one day you are going to get your financials audited. You need to appoint an auditor, your chartered accountant or a chartered accountancy firm, and you have to invite them to do the audit of your financials, and they will come and do, and they will look at your controls and everything, and also financials, and on a random or the sample basis, finally auditor will issue a report, auditor's report, based on the the findings what they have seen. It is in simple terms. Auditor is totally an independent person. You cannot simply say that, look here, you do the way that I want. No, the real auditor will not do that. Of course, there are auditors who might do it the way that you want, but most of the large firms, they will not do it. An auditor can be, because that's how it happens. So every limited liability company should have a qualified auditor. Have I done the justification for the question?
Yes, I think you have cleared the doubt that most of us had. So thank you very much. Thank you for taking the time once again. It's such an insightful session, sir. Thank you again.
My pleasure. Thanks. Stay safe. Thank you. Thanks, Tissa. Thanks, Rohantha.
Before we move
Thanks.
on, everyone, there's a quick announcement for all the Rotaractors. That is to mark your attendance. There's a link shared by the district secretary. So please go into that link, mark your attendance if you haven't yet, because we are only opening it up for a couple of minutes more. We are going to close it. So make sure you mark your attendance before we close it out. All right. So next up on the agenda, we have yet another respected personality to highlight the purpose of this training, right? So he joined Rotary back in 1988. He served as the district governor for the Rotary year 2020-21, 2001. Pardon. He had served as the district secretary, RI president, vice chairman, district centennial committee chairman, district trainer, and district advisor numerous times. Rotarian Krish is who is up next. He's a fellow member of the Chartered Institute of Management Accountants, and he's also a member of the British Institute of Management. He's the group finance director at DMS Holdings. He has served as a council member of the Institute of Chartered Management Accountants, Sri Lankan division as well. And like I said, it is none other than the Rotary District Trainer for the year 2020-21, past Rotary District Governor, Rotarian Krish Rajendra. Over to you, sir.
PDG Krish, I think you're on mute.
Are you okay now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'll start again. District Governor Ajit, DRR Kasun, PDG Tissa. I don't know if the Sujiva is still there. Sujiva, our keynote speaker. District Youth Service Chairman, past President Rohantha. District Stewardship Chairman Harsha. My dear friends in Rotary family. First of all, let me congratulate DRR Kasum, who has taken the initiative to organize this virtual seminar on financial training for Rotaract clubs. And why the need for accounting and auditing? An audit for an organization is important as it provides credibility to a set of financial statements and give the stakeholders confidence that the accounts give true and fair view. It can also help to improve an organization's internal control and systems. The benefit of accounts being audited are determine the accuracy of internal control. Number two, promote best practices for control. Three, ensure compliances with policies and regulations. Four, access efficient and responsible use of resources. Five, provided objective insight. And most importantly, to show the members and the outside donors, that is the stakeholders, the transparency and accountability. For instance, the Rotary Foundation for the 12th consecutive year has been awarded by Charity Navigator the 4-star status, which is the highest award any charity organization can get. Mind you, friends, the world's Charity Navigator is the world's largest and most utilized independent non-profit evaluator. So now for Charity Navigator to award 4-star status for our foundation for the last 12 years, that means our foundation's credibility on financial is greater. Not only that, the world's richest person, not now, maybe a couple of years back, the Bill Gates and Melinda Gates Foundation was contributing to our foundation. If they don't rely on our foundation, they wouldn't have contributed. So, my dear friends, today we have two important personalities who is going to speak to us the need for the best practice in accounting and need for an audit. They are PDG Tissa Bandaranaike, who has been the practicing chartered accountant and also partner at Ernst & Young. And then we have District Stewardship Chairman Harsha Rajan, who is the partner at KPMG. Mind you, EY and KPMG, these are the two audit firms are within the best 5 audit firms in the world. They will be, of course, introduced formally later. So I hope you will enjoy the session and learn a lot. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you, Rotaract. Thank you, PDG Rotarian Krish, for your insightful words. We can now move on to the first technical session for the evening. That is to educate us on this matter. We have a very well-known, illustrious personality. Joining Rotary 45 years ago, he served as a district governor in the year 1999-2000 and served as a member of the RI Finance Committee as well from the years 2013 to 2016, currently serving as a coordinator for the TRF's International Technical Cadre for Financial Audit, mainly focusing on global grants, audits, and also the cadre leader for Rotary Zone 5. And the club trainer and executive director of the Rotary Club of Colombo. He was the district advisor for the Rotary 2019-20 and Rotary Council legislation representative from the years 2017 to 2020. Professionally, he is a chartered accountant, a retired senior audit and technical partner after 27 years of service with Ernst & Young in Sri Lanka. Please welcome past Rotary District Governor, Rotarian Tissa Bandaranaike. Over to you, sir.
Krish, have you finished?
Yes, Tissa.
Because there was a power cut here and suddenly I lost the connection.
Okay.
I just got it back. So I'm sorry about that.
Okay, I'm done. It's over to you.
Okay, can I start then? Or?
Go ahead, Rotarian, you can start.
Okay. So good evening, everybody. From what I have seen so far, we have had some very good presentations touching on some very important aspects of ethical conduct and matters of that nature. But for this particular phase, what we, when I say we, I'm talking about myself and Rotarian Harsha Rajan, what we thought we'll do is to try and attend to some of the issues that are worrying or bothering most of the Rotaractors when it comes to matters of finance and accounts. And we were fortunate to have received from DRR Kasun a list of few items like that. And we thought we'll share those amongst ourselves, the two of us, and try to deal with them in some manner. The first thing was about the importance of maintaining what has been stated as professional accounts. Now, what is professional accounts? I believe, hello. I believe what is actually meant there is accounts to be prepared in a proper manner, and the need for that, the importance of maintaining the accounts in that fashion. So what is so special about preparing a set of accounts in a professional manner? What are the main characteristics that you find in a set of accounts, such a set of accounts? I would think that number one, they would be meaningful. The accounts will be meaningful to the reader. They'll understand what is trying to convey, whether it is status of the financial position, or whether it is the status of income and expenditure, or whatever it is. The next thing is that it will be more informative. In other words, all the relevant, important disclosures are made in the accounts, which will help the people to understand the accounts even better. Thirdly, I would say another characteristic is the well-prepared accounts will make sense. If not, we have seen cases where you can't make anything out of it the way it is prepared. And another important characteristic is that it will not be misleading. The reader will not be misled into believing something which is not there or which is not true. And finally, I would say it helps, that type of accounts helps the management, or in the case of, for example, a Rotaract club, helps the club leaders or the directors or the board to make proper and important decisions. These decisions may be for the good of the club, or may be for the good of the community that you try to serve. All these features will be embedded in a properly prepared set of accounts. For a set of accounts to be prepared in this manner, it is very essential that the preparer, now again, in the case of a Rotary club, the preparer will be the treasurer. And the treasurer should take care to make sure that he prepares those accounts in keeping with or complying with the best practices that are prevalent today. The best practices. And one of that is, when I say best practices, it is really based on what is commonly referred to as generally accepted accounting principles. Now, that is a generalized term, generally accepted accounting principles, that they must be obeyed and they must be complied with. Of course, these principles are further detailed in accounting standards. There's something called accounting standards issued by the Institute of Chartered Accountants. And these accounting standards are like adopted from global accounting standards, so it's not something peculiar to Sri Lanka. But at the same time, they have been modified where necessary to suit the Sri Lankan environment. But I don't want to go into that degree of detail on accounting standards. That's a separate subject altogether. But suffice it to say that the accounts must be prepared using the generally accepted accounting principles. Now, just to illustrate this, I would like to give one example. This is, actually this brings me to this question of previously how we prepared accounts based on the cash movements. If we receive money, if we get it into our hands, we account for it as a receipt. If we actually pay out any money and the money physically goes out, then we account for it as a payment. So then the account that you prepare became automatically a receipts and payments account, which merely reflects a cash movement. How much money came in, how much money went out. But a proper set of accounts is not prepared in that manner. That is, in other words, it's no longer prepared using the cash basis of accounting. So instead, what do we use? We use what is commonly referred to as the accrual basis of accounting, or the accrual concept. Those of you who may be familiar with some accountancy will know what I'm talking about. Simply speaking, it means that if you take a practical situation, say you organize a certain benefit show to raise funds. You have entrance ticket money to be collected, which is done through your members and maybe other people. Now, some of the people would have already given the money back to you by a certain date. Others haven't still brought it back. Now, does it mean that your income from the ticket sales is equal to the value of money that you have physically received into your hands as at the date of the accounts? Obviously not, because there is so much more to come after that date, which is not yet collected. So what we do is we account for that too. And we call it what is received and what is yet to be received together. It's no longer called a receipt, we call it income. Similarly, sometimes we may say you may decide to visit a certain project site that you are doing something out of Colombo, and you hire a vehicle to go there with your team. And somebody known to you has provided you with this vehicle for which there is an agreed payment to make. And because the person is known to you, you have not paid for it yet, but you have used the facility. You have gone there, returned, done the project. Now the accounts are drawn in between before that money is also paid. So once again, just like in the case of money coming in, our expenses do not mean whatever we had paid in cash before. On top of that, we have to also account for monies that we have yet to make. Our liabilities have got to be settled. So those have got to be accounted. And then it's no longer a payment that we are accounting for expenses. Expenses may be physically paid by cash or not. So in other words, that what used to be a receipt and payment account has now become an income and expenditure account. And the accounts will also reflect through the statement of financial position, or what we commonly refer to as a balance sheet, it will show what are our dues to be collected and what are our dues to be paid out to our creditors. Now, that was just to illustrate this accrual concept of accounting. This is very important in the case of a club, especially because you can see figures, you can see a certain profit or a certain loss arising from a project or anything that you have done. But to the reader, unfortunately, he sees only that. But to anybody who reads that, we should understand that that's only half the story. The real figures are different. We may have made a profit, whereas this may show you a loss, and vice versa. So this is the importance of using the generally accepted accounting principle concept. So all this means one important fundamental point to my mind. The club treasurer, to do this, has to be familiar with the basics of bookkeeping and accounting. The basics, the fundamentals. Somebody who is totally new to it, he may be able to write in a book, how much money came in and how much money went out, and that's it. That is not bookkeeping. That is only a very basic entry. But that's why we say, when you choose a treasurer, if he has to do a proper job, he should have that knowledge that he has to possess in order to maintain proper books of accounts. Then the next item was about having a qualified auditor, and at what stage do you get in touch with the auditor. I'm glad that Mr. Sujiva Rajapaksa also touched on this in the course of his address, when he said that the auditor should be appointed at the annual meeting of the club, or what we call annual general meeting. It's the same thing even for a company or any business. It is at the annual meeting of the owners, members, shareholders, whatever you call it, who appoint the auditor. So for a Rotaract club too, at the annual meeting that you perhaps usually have, I believe, in about December or so, make sure that you propose and second and adopt and approve the appointment of an auditor. Now, the next thing is a qualified auditor. Now, what is meant by a qualified auditor? Unfortunately, the meaning of the word qualified is also not really a standard meaning. The qualification required of an auditor varies depending on the type of organization that he is going to audit. As you heard from Mr. Sujiva, for example, if it is a public company listed in the stock exchange, that qualified auditor means it has to be a chartered accountant who has got a license to practice. Nobody else can do it. Now, in the case of a club, it's the other extreme. What is extremely critical is that the person who is appointed as auditor has a good knowledge of the accounting concepts about what he has to check in the course of an audit and matters of that nature. So what most clubs do, I know, is that instead of going to big audit firms, because it may cost them more money to get their services, they go to sometimes sole practitioners. There are small-time practitioners who will do the job. Or otherwise, it really, for a club, I believe, unless it's absolutely mentioned about the word qualified, the one non-paper qualification is his independence. Independence is a fundamental requirement of an auditor. That matter was also touched on by Mr. Rajapaksa, because when an auditor looks at the books and checks the whatever records that you have, if he finds something wrong, a normal auditor, if who is independent, if he thinks that that mistake is a serious one, he may want to either report on the matter with the accounts when he gives his report, or he may get the company to adjust the accounts to correct for that. One of the two. But if it is an auditor who is not independent, say somebody from within the club who was also in your own board of directors, or it may be an outsider who is a very close family member of yours, or a very, very close friend. Now, such a person may sometimes, even if he finds a mistake like that, agree not to highlight that issue, just to, because it's your friend's organization, things like that, which will mislead all the people who are the rest of the members of the club. So this is why they say always ensure that you go to somebody independent. I would say if it is absolutely impossible for a Rotaract club to go to even a small-time practicing firm of auditors, you can even go to some kind of professional accountant in another organization or in another Rotaract club if you so wish. There's nothing to hide in this. Or otherwise, it should at least not be a person who is involved in the management of those finances in the club. In other words, he should not have taken part in any decision-making activities of the club. So at the very least, it should be that, provided, of course, he still has the knowledge on the accounts that I mentioned earlier. So the other question that was raised when DG and Kasun told us the various issues that people are concerned with is, at what point do you contact the auditor? Say you have appointed now, but having appointed the auditor, at what point do you contact him? You can contact him after you finish preparing your own accounts. In other words, the treasurer prepares the accounts. Treasurer may have prepared the accounts, but can he just send it to the auditor to audit? No, it is not the way to do it. After the treasurer prepares those accounts, what we would call draft accounts, that should be first presented to the board of your club. And the board must go through it, ask any questions which are things that are not clear about it, and get satisfied with it. And then once the board approves it as their own draft accounts. Now, why I say their own draft accounts is that you can't say, if anybody asks any question, well, we have nothing to do with it. It's all prepared by our treasurer. He is responsible. No, it is the responsibility of the club board to prepare those accounts. And they're using the treasurer to do it for them. That's how it works. So you can either wait for the accounts to be approved by the board and ready to send to the auditor for you to contact the auditor and say, now we are ready, can you please audit this? Or I would say better if you tell them before you really finalize, when you are closer to the date of finalizing, in other words, warning the auditor, look, we are going to send you the accounts within so many weeks or whatever. Be ready to audit these because we like to have your audited accounts back by this such and such a date. So that is how you communicate with the auditor and the point at which you communicate. Okay, now I come to another aspect. Really, this also was touched, I think, by both Krish and PDG Krish and Mr. Sujiva. The importance of audit. What does it do? Why is it so important? They have also answered it, and I also would like to touch on it. I like to say one thing before I really come to that this concept of audit is something not new. This has been there for ages. If you ask a historian, he would say that in the time of the ancient kings, I believe it is in an era going back to the days of King Nisankamalla, in Polonnaru area, they have unearthed a large stone inscription, huge one. And in that, when they read it, it refers to the royal treasury, the king's treasury, being audited at regular intervals. Now you will be amazed. Now these how many, maybe more than 1,000 years ago. So it is not something new. What has happened is the practice of auditing has improved over the years. It has evolved all the time in meeting the demands of a changing business environment in the world. And so we have also moved with it. That's why we have these accounting standards, which are kept always renewed whenever it is deemed necessary. These are like our Rotary bylaws, to be precise. So what is the important? What does the audit do? It ensures greater accuracy and completeness of accounts. That's one of the very, very important fundamental things. It ensures accuracy. Rather than getting an unaudited set of accounts, we'll be able to rely much more on the audited set of accounts. And also in the auditor's report, hopefully, if there are any major weaknesses or errors in the accounting system or in the accounts per se, they will be highlighted in the audit by the auditor. So therefore the reader will get properly informed of what has been going on in the club. This is why we say that the audit is important. There are two more areas I like to touch. One is about draft accounts as against audited accounts. The draft accounts, as I already mentioned, is what is prepared by the treasurer and eventually reviewed and approved by the board, by the club board, to be given for audit. Then what does the auditor do? When such accounts are given to the auditor, he starts checking them. he is checking them with all the backup information that he needs, he expects. We, in technical terms, call it checking supporting evidence. That's the normal technical term we use. Now, what sort of things get covered under this supporting evidence? I would say simply things like, say, bills or invoices or estimates, copies of receipts, then the bank deposit slips, check counterfoils, bank statements, etc., etc. And don't forget, it also includes sometimes minutes of your board meetings, because those also sometimes contain very important decisions which should have an impact on the accounts that they are supposed to audit, or if there are certain things that have happened. For example, some amounts that are due to the club has been written off in the accounts. Now that is not good enough for the auditor. He'll want to see whether the club board has approved that write-off, and that approval should be covered in the board minutes. Now these are important things that you should always remember. And and of course, having done that complete check, he will then prepare his audit report and submit it to the club. So this is the importance of having the audited accounts and the difference between the audited accounts and the non-unaudited accounts, or what we call draft accounts. And final point is further little clarification on or between administration expenses and project expenses. The administration or administrative expenses are those that are incurred for the general running of the Rotaract Club. Now this is, when we say general running, it has nothing to do with the projects that you have been doing. That's a separate area. This is just administrative side, keeping the club afloat. That is the day-to-day running of the club. And all expenses pertaining to that aspect is brought under the title administration account. So things like even if there are any meeting costs throughout the year when you meet, if there may be stationery costs, there may be like sometimes badges or things like that, pennants or banners that the club makes, maybe postage and other expenses, bank charges, and also district dues, if there are any RI dues, all that will come under this heading, administration account. At the same time, those are the expenses. The income side also will be similarly split in under these two headings. Any income earned to pay these administrative expenses, that is normally by way of subscriptions or interest that you have earned on savings accounts or other deposit accounts, or general sponsorships that the club may have received from the community, or any personal contributions that have been received by the club, not specifically identified for a particular project. Those are all coming under administration income. Now against that, if you look at project expenses, it is much more easy to understand. Any project that you carry out will have certain expenses pertaining to that particular project. So if you do several projects during the year, each project should be taken separately each project is taken separately. These income and the expenses for that project should be dealt with again separately identified. Now, having said that, it is always recommended that at a minimum, it's better to have two accounts, two bank accounts. One to take care of the monies coming in and going out on administration, other one, the same thing on projects. But if a particular Rotaract club finds it really difficult to do that, having maintained two accounts, then you can have one bank account. But in such an event, what is important is that in accounting or in bookkeeping records, it should be done in such a manner that very easily one can allocate what expense goes to which particular project or which income goes into which particular unit, whether it's admin or project or what. So this is the difference between project expense accounting and administration expense accounting. I didn't touch on the budgeting side because that was fairly well dealt with by Sujiva also. That's about all that I wanted to convey on these topics. Now, there are a few more topics I know, which I feel my colleague Rotarian Harsha may deal with. So thank you very much for your patient hearing. Thank you.
Thank you very much, PDG Rotary and Tissa, for that extremely informative session. We learned a lot about audits and everything to do with audits. I think a lot of things to do with audits. So it is really an opportunity for us to enhance our knowledge as well. So thank you once again for that session. Before we move on, Rotractors, there's a quick announcement. We will send you all a link to the second section of the event. So make sure to go to that link and mark your attendance. So we will only have it for a couple of minutes, just so make sure to put your attendance if you haven't yet. And also make sure to keep your microphones on mute at all times. All right, so as for the second and the final technical session of the evening, we have yet another eminent speaker. He's currently serving as the Stewardship Chairman of Rotary District 3220, and he's also the club secretary of the Rotary Club of Colombo West. He's a partner at KPMG Sri Lanka with a portfolio of audit clients in varied industries. He has been with KPMG for over 20 odd years, and he has presented on various seminars on accounting and auditing standards and corporate governance as well. He has served as a council member of the association and accounting technicians and chairman of AAT Business School. He's a fellow member of the Association of Certified Chartered Accountants, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka, and an associate member of the Institute of Certified Management Accountants of Sri Lanka as well. So everyone, please welcome Rotarian Harsha Rajan to take over. Over to you, sir.
Good evening, everybody. Seems we are coming close to our timings. I will dive directly into my presentation. I had a presentation prepared. Unfortunately, I think it has been, the screen sharing has been blocked, is it?
We can do that, Rotarian Harsha. Let me just give you co-host. Yes. You can share now.
Yeah. Okay. Basically, as I was saying, we will be looking at basic accounting standards and documents to be maintained and the best financial practices for a Rotaract club, the consequences of not maintaining the proper accounts. And one more thing Kasun said was a bit of a confusion created by the clubs is that how do they have to pay RI dues, which I think is going to be relevant for the Rotaract clubs in a coming year or so. So On financial management stewardship, the first thing I want to elaborate is on the what is stewardship. So basically, stewardship is being accountable for the money that we have been given by the donors. So it's basically using the Rotary Foundation funds in a responsible and transparent manner. So which it also includes implementing grant projects according to the Rotary Foundation policies and proper grant management and financial compliance. Finance management becomes very critical here is because once you have good financial management, you are able to display to others that how you manage their funds properly, which builds trust on the project and the user of the funds. So what are the consequences of poor financial management and stewardship? As I was mentioning, loss of Rotary funds is the basic pitfall. You would have wasted a lot of money on unnecessary expenditures. Maybe there were inflated invoices, and probably there may be frauds which don't get detected because the financial management was not in place. And obviously, it would damage Rotary's reputation as well. Because once if a news gets out that people are mismanaging funds, there's nobody going to give you money to spend because Rotary has created trust over 100 years, which is built on good financial management and stewardship. So that is why it's very critical that all Rotary projects and even Rotaract projects are managed properly. It also weakens the project and limits the impact the project has on the community. So if you are given a project with 100,000, if the 100,000 is not utilized properly, the beneficiaries lose out because they wouldn't have got the value for the 100,000. And even the project may not have been sustainable. You may have to cut short on some of the supplies that are needed for the project to be a sustainable project. And obviously negatively impacts the beneficiaries. And the most critical thing for a Rotaract club would be sanctions. So if the Rotary International or the audit turns out that the club has not maintained proper financial records and there are possible misuse of funds, I don't think sanctions would be the immediate thing. There would be warnings and all that kind of stuff. But if it goes unabated, you would risk sanctions, and even the worst case, the club may be sacked from the Rotary district. Obviously, this is the other side of the coin. If you maintain good financial management and stewardship, it safeguards Rotary's funds, it maintains the reputation, enables long-lasting projects with positive impact to beneficiaries, and also allows clubs to continue the global grant without fear of sanctions or disbarring from the Rotary International. And now we move on to see how we can have good financial management. So this is one of the documents I think the district treasurer had circulated. I believe you all would have had that. It's a one-page document, maybe a couple of years back, would have sent by District Treasurer Harin. I've taken a few pointers off that. So one of the recommendations in that document, you need to have a bank account specifically for projects. I think PDG Tissa was explaining to have one specifically for your admin expense and a project account. One of the best practices would be to have a bank account specifically for each project, so that when the accounting becomes very simple. So you have all the income pertaining to project A in say one account, and all the expenditure would go through that account. And then when you move on to project B, you will have another separate bank account, maybe the same bank, but a separate account to have all the expenditure and income going into this project. So when it comes to audit or even evaluation at a later stage, it becomes very convenient. And one of the controls that is minimum expected is any expenditure that goes from the club has to be minimum authorized by 2 signatories. So in that case, it is easier to maintain a current account rather than a savings account, which already inbuilds those controls. So you can have the bank account requiring minimum 2 signatories for any checks to be processed. And one of those signatories has to be the treasurer. Usually the clubs have other signatories as the president or the secretary could be the co-signatory for the checks. The minimum requirement of treasurer is that, as PDG Tissa was explaining, he used the guy who would have a reasonable understanding of the accounting requirements and the controls in place. That is why we recommend a treasurer to be a signatory in the checks. Obviously, cash book, as Mr. PDC was explaining, cash book is one of the fundamental documents that a club has to maintain. But ensure the cash book is updated on a regular basis as and when any money is received or when money is paid. Because some of the downfalls that we see is that the clubs wait till maybe end of the month because there are only a few transactions to update it. By then, some entries get forgotten, misplaced, documents get misplaced. So what we recommend is, as soon as possible, keep the receipts and payments updated on your cash book. And similarly, and one other thing, the recommendations is that the same bank account to be continued for the ensuing year. We have seen some practices in clubs where each president changes his bank account, they close on the previous bank account and then go with a new one. There is no continuity. Invariably, what happens is that the tracking becomes very difficult later on, right? And it's a cumbersome process to check from one bank account to another bank account, changing every year on year. So the recommendation is, this is for like the admin account, not the project accounts, be clear. For the admin account, you continue with the same bank account that you all have from the previous years. So the idea would be at the end of the year, the signatories should be changed from the current year president to the incoming president, secretary, and the treasurer. So then there's continuity in the bank accounts. Once you have the current account in place, the next most critical control people look at is to have a bank reconciliation on a monthly basis. So the bank reconciliations have to be done on a monthly basis to ensure what Mr. PDG Tissa was explaining on the accrual basis of accounting. It's a similar concept where you may have issued checks, but may not have got presented by the time, by the end of the month. So your bank account may reflect a higher balance, but you may have a lot of checks which have not been presented. So once you prepare the bank rec, you will have a clear idea how much money exactly would there be in your bank account. On the best practice of bank reconciliations, bank reconciliations has to be prepared one person and it has to be reviewed by another. I have a small detail of bank reconciliation later on in the presentation. We will take you in detail when we come there. The next one is a very critical control that the clubs must have. The payment vouchers used for expenditure must be pre-numbered when making payments. Some of the clubs that we have seen, payment vouchers are prepared. However, they are not pre-numbered. So when you don't have pre-numbered payment vouchers, it is difficult for an auditor or anybody else to check how many payments were actually made in the year and whether all the payments have been accounted for. That is basically saying whether all payments made during the year have got accounted. Because there won't be a sequential number for you to track if any payments are missing. And moving on from that, the payment vouchers should be only authorized if there is proper supporting documents such as invoices, receipts, and those invoices and receipts have to be attached with the payment voucher. So it's easy for reference at a later date. And this is one of the other critical things. Cash payments actually are a taboo. We recommend that you use only checks for any payments. If in the remote case that you are unable to make a check payment, only then should you use a cash payment and make sure that at least 2 people have signed on the check to withdraw the cash and the controls are made there to ensure it will go on to the right person. The next one is to see the cash receipts. They need to be banked at the earliest possible time. People should not be hanging on to the cash which has been collected and not banking them. Now we move on to the formats of the financial reporting. Most of the formats were derived from the Rotaract handbook that was circulated by Kasun. I'm pretty sure most of you all, all of you all should be having that. I've extracted a few of the most important statements which were there for ready reference. Now, if you see, this is basically the project account summary, which includes all the project accounts. It's a summary of all the project accounts done by the club during the year. So in this, what you have is all the project names on this column where I say project service, club service 1, 2, 3, community service, international service, public image, everything is mentioned here. Which avenue of service it is also mentioned. That is this one, date of the project, and whether the project made money, whether surplus would be here or the deficit would be there. So here we are having only the net amounts disclosed, right? That would be either the profit or a loss of the project wise. The statement has been prepared here. To prepare this statement, it comes actually from a detailed income or expenditure account. That would be this one. If you see on the column on the right hand side, the income with all the descriptions are given. Sponsor A, B, C, D is shown with the amounts and the amount you received from ticket sales. And on the left hand side, you have all the expenditure. Expenditure A, B, C are relevant to the project. The net of the two is basically either your profit or loss. And as PDG Tissa was explaining, this has to be based on an accrual basis concept. Not only the cash that you actually paid, anything that you have committed to pay or already incurred also has to be accounted for here. Then only you will actually know whether you actually made money or you have lost money. And one of the things to maintain is the documentation has to be maintained for ticket sales. One of the things that we see is a lot of people have maybe a raffle draw or some kind of ticketed event, and they don't maintain the unsold books and all that. But that is wrong. We need to maintain these unsold tickets also have to be recollected and kept for audit. So basically, if you have printed 1,000 tickets, you have sold on 800, the remaining 200 tickets have to be kept in safe custody. I'm sure the auditors, when they come to audit, will ask for those tickets to reconcile and see how many tickets you printed, how many were sold, how many are remaining, to check whether the amount you're showing as ticket sales is accurate. Right? So this would be on the project account. This is a statement for your administrative account. As I said, the statement has to continue from the opening balance of the previous year, what we had, and then all your membership collections, district dues, what you've paid, all that would get accounted here. The total of income is on the right-hand side, and the expenses would be on the left-hand side. The net would be your profit or loss. And each of this would have to be supported. So like notes, you can give 1, 2, 3. We are given 2 examples are given here for membership due collections and meeting expenses, which I will show you in the next slide. So basically that would drill down into these kind of details where you say member 1, 2, 3, these are the dues which I've collected from these members. These are the meeting expenses that we had for the first board meeting, second board meeting, general meetings. Each expenses are listed out. Anybody looking at this can check, okay, for this board meeting, this was the expenditure. These are the members which I paid. How many members are supposed to pay? Everything can be looked at simply. Now, once you have the project account and the admin account done, this is the amalgamation of both the project accounts and the admin accounts. If you see, you have the project account summary with all the total projects there, and the admin account summary would come here. So with both of this together, this account would actually give you the snapshot of the club's profit or loss status, or surplus of income or expenditure status at a particular year. Right? So now if you to understand, earlier we looked at the admin accounts, how to prepare admin accounts separately, the project account separately, and then we amalgamate both together to the final account summary. It's not necessary to call it exactly these names. You can have any name you want as long as all the details are provided. I believe it should be okay. Moving on, as I said, the bank reconciliation, this is how you prepare a bank reconciliation. So first you start with the balance as per the bank statement. So the bank statement will say, okay, you have 10,000 rupees in your bank account, right? You need to bring it down to say, okay, these are the unpresented checks. What are the checks I've already issued to my, for expenditure and which are not been banked as yet. And there may be some deposits which are made to the bank has not credited in your statement. So when you add the unpresented checks and deduct the unrealized deposits, that number should tally to your cash book balance. That's a simple check you have to do on a monthly basis to ensure all the monies have got accounted for on a monthly basis. Right? So those are the formats. Basically, this is a very brief outline of the formats and what is required by the Rotaract clubs. Now moving on to payment of RI dues. So if there are any questions, I could take it on. Once we finish the presentation, this is basically another couple of minutes I should be able to complete. There was a question on RI dues, how to make payments, right? When the payments become due, usually the Rotary International has a list of members, and it assesses as of June and December how many members each club has. And the invoice is usually issued in July and January. So please be careful to update the number of members. Soon as resignations happen or additions happen, you will need to update your international directory. What are some of the cases we observe is that people are not updated by June. International starts issuing invoices with the number of members. So if the resignations are not updated, if 5 members have resigned and you still keep them, you'll end up paying Rotary International dues for those 5 members as well, right? It becomes a very big hassle to reverse, which usually International does not. So then you'll end up paying more than what you need to pay. The payments are made to the fiscal agent. Fiscal agent would be a local representative of the Rotary International, and it does not have to be paid in dollars. Usually the exchange rate is updated monthly at the Rotary website. You need to check the exchange rate at which the website is displaying and make the payment to the fiscal agent as and when the invoice is raised. And that is basically it from my side. Any questions? We'd be happy to take on any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Rotarian Harsha, for that extremely informative session. I think we've had a few brilliant sessions, very educational, and there was a lot to learn. So we can now move on to the Q&A portion of the evening. So feel free to join in, Rotarians. Also, bear with me, we do have quite a long list of questions. But with the time restriction, we'll just see how many we can accommodate. So we can jump into a few questions. Rotaract Kasun, Rotaract Insaf, feel free to join the discussion as well as all the other Rotarians, the speakers, the panelists. Please join in. I won't direct them to a certain Rotarian, but feel free to join in at any time. So starting off, so there was a list of documents that we had to collect for an audit, right? So even Rotarian Tessa mentioned like a list of documents that we needed. What if we don't have that certain documents from those? What if we couldn't collect it during the year? What happens then? How do we sort of go about it?
Okay, so technically, if you do not have those documents, you should not have made the payments of the initial stage. Let's say, for example, you are making a payment for a hotel for maybe an installation or something. So the hotel is failing to provide you with the invoice. Ideally, you should not have made the payment in the first place, right? So if the payment has been made with an invoice and subsequently it goes missing, what would happen is when the auditor comes to check, the invoice is not there, it would be reported as a finding in the audit report saying that, okay, these kind of expenditure were not supported with supporting documents. However, the committee had ended up paying these expenditures. So it should kind of look bad on the committee to say that they have not made proper use of the financial monies. So people could interpret in a way to say that, look, there's mismanagement of funds, that people are paying payments without cause. That's why we say it's very important to make sure that all documents are maintained. And I think the recommendation is to maintain those documents for a minimum of 5 years. So just because the president's year is over doesn't mean that you can just get rid of the documents. So International can come back after even 2-3 years and ask you, okay, where is this supporting document? Right? Anything to add, Tissa? You're on mute, I think, Tissa.
Sorry, just to add to what you said, Harsha, I'm happy that you mentioned about the consequences of not having the required documents. Now, this becomes extremely severe when it comes to a global grant type of expenditure, related expenditure. Because I have seen in not only here, but even in several other districts, that when there is a payment made without adequate documentation, and once that is reported, the whole thing is reported online. There's no hiding of anything. And there have been cases where the districts, even though they had actually genuinely spent the money, but because of lack of evidence that they desire to see, they have been like pushed by the Rotary Foundation to make good that money. So people have to pocket out that money to remit that money back to the foundation, where it's treated as unauthorized expenses. So it becomes extremely critical when you, that's one of the reasons why I mentioned at one of our previous discussions, that when Rotaract clubs, if and when they get involved with global grants, you will have to undergo some special training to make sure that you don't fall into these traps. Just to add to what you said. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Rotarians. Moving on, are there any tax involvements for donations if you are collecting donations? Are there any tax reductions or involvements of sorts?
If you look at taxes, there are no exemptions because you're a Rotaract club. If you fall under the category, you will end up paying taxes. So it depends on your registrations as well. If you register as NGO tax, there's on any donations, 28% of the donation, 3% you will pay. Unless you're a registered charity. So as long as Rotary or Rotaract is not a registered charity, you will not get any exemptions for taxes.
Okay. All right, thank you, Rotarian. So moving on, is it a requirement to submit club bylaws to an auditor as well?
Yeah, I would say that it is, I mean, not that you have to give it beforehand, but if the auditor wants to see it, you should be able to provide that. That won't have a direct, immediate bearing on what he's auditing, but just to understand whether the club has followed the correct procedures, he may want to see whether even the appointment of officers and things like that, those are indirectly affecting the accounts that you are auditing, because it's those people who are authorizing and doing everything in the club. So to see that even their own appointments have been properly done in keeping with the bylaws. So it's only if he asks, I would say, not otherwise you don't have to give it. That's my view anyway.
Right. Okay. Also, Rotarian, is there like a particular deadline that we have to submit audits for? Say our submission date is on the 30th of a particular month. How long would an auditor take to audit these accounts? Is it in days, months, weeks? Is there a particular deadline?
I think, Rajesh, you will be in a better position to answer. We are currently very much in that.
Rotaract clubs are not too complex entities, so it should not take too long, provided all the documentation is maintained properly. So as an auditor, when I go, the biggest issue I have is the documents don't get maintained properly. Once you request, only the committee members start looking for it. Sometimes it's in the treasurer's house, sometimes it's somewhere else. Then they drag everything and come, then it delays the audit. So until I get the documents and actually verify, I would need a little bit extra time. So a club audit usually shouldn't take more than a week or two. Especially if the resident payment, the maximum within 2 weeks, I think any auditor should be able to finish it. The documentations have been kept properly.
I would agree, yes.
Right, okay. Okay, so the next question is more of in terms of what we've shared at the beginning of the year. So in the sample budget format, there's a comparison between last year's budget and the actual expenses before determining the budget for this year. But due to this whole COVID situation, this year's budget might be drastically, different from last year's. In that case, is it okay to omit it, or should we have it, or is it okay if the last year's budget and expenses are not mentioned in the budget, in this year's budget? How do we sort of tackle that situation?
In club accounts, I haven't seen much the previous year's budget reproduced, like sometimes in management accounts of a company, you find that kind of thing. But what they are more interested is the current budget. I mean, for the current administration purpose, what is it given the environment we are now working in, the best estimate of what our income and expenses are going to be with the change of, the kind of meetings we are having and all sorts of things. So as long as you prepare the current budget, it need not have a direct bearing on the previous year. It has to be looked at really from a more current and immediate future point of view, rather than the past, especially in changing circumstances like this. Harsha, anything you like to add there?
You hit the nail on the head. So there's nothing more to say. It's basically like what Tissa was explaining earlier. If you look at our company budgets, I think travel cost was a significant component. Now travel cost has significantly reduced, and it's more of the data and the telecommunication cost that is increasing. Just because I had travel cost last year, I'm not expecting the same thing this year. What we need to do is incorporate that into your budget, saying that, okay, because of the corona situation, travel is going to be restricted and more is going to be on the data. And going forward, there's nothing wrong in revising a budget. We are not gods, we don't know what's going to happen by the end of the year. So if you come to the middle of a year and then in an interim stage, the committee, that it can't be a unilateral decision, it has to be by the committee. They look at it and say, okay, reasonably we made an estimate. Now we need to revise it. As long as all the committee members are in agreement, I don't see an issue in revising the budget.
Right. Okay. What happens if the Rotaract board of officials have completed the year and they still have to make transaction related to the previous year? How do you go about when that happens?
I would imagine that going by what Harsha also said, that by not starting a new bank account and continuing with the same old account, it's only a matter of changing the signatories with effect from 1st of July or whatever that date. As long as, going by that previous principle he mentioned, if any payments have got to be made, then the people who are responsible for that have got to authorize that payment. In other words, now for the check signatory who is coming, now his time has come. So they are the registered signatories now. And still, suddenly they are faced with an invoice or some bill that has to be paid in respect of the previous year. That person who was responsible for incurring that expenditure in the previous year has to authorize that bill for the benefit of the current year signatories. Only if that is there, they will, I think, they should actually make the payment, not otherwise. So it doesn't mean that the same signatories have got to sign the checks in the future. Otherwise, everything will get mismatched. I mean, you can't have it. You'll find both sets of expenses going together at the same time, and some to be signed by a different set of signatory. That will be difficult. Any other ideas, Harsha?
That's, I think all the clubs are following the same thing like what you mentioned. I don't think there's any other alternative to that as well.
Yeah.
I think that the invoices have to be authorized by the respective person who actually incurred the expenditure.
Right.
And if that account is not maintained, what happens then? So when the year is over, if you change accounts and we still have to make transactions from the previous account.
Situation is kind of highly unlikely, because once you close the bank account, all the money gets transferred to the new bank account. Right. Technically, I mean, you're not going to leave the money on that old bank account. So it should get transferred. So again, like Patisa said, the signatories would be the new president and the treasurer. So they will have to come with the invoice and say, look, we've incurred this expenditure, please pay. On that request, the current signatories can sign from the new check and, new bank account and issue the payment.
And actually, it is considered a bad practice to continue into the new year for a period of time, still operating the same old balances in the other account, when the requirement is on the 1st of July, that bank balance should be either, if it is a new account, okay, transfer it to the new account entirely what is there, and comes back to the same story from that point. The new signatories will take care of it from that point onwards. So really what you have to advise the Rotaract clubs is, best thing is, without having to go through the process of opening a new bank account, best is to continue with the bank account. Bank account continues. Same thing that happens even in a company. You know, it doesn't matter what it is. Even our Rotary clubs, we have the same thing. The new team comes, but the date of change is effectively midnight of 30th June. So there's no issue as long as each party takes responsibility for approving what has got to be done.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Rotarians. Coming back to the question of documents.
And one moment, Tissa and Rajesh, these payments can be made provided that they make the accruals, so the incoming directors can see the accruals and make the payment.
Yeah, that's another point. That's good. Good question. Because these payments have got to be shown as payables in the accounts at 30th June. True, quite true.
All right, thank you. As I was saying, coming back to the question of documents, do we need to maintain the payment slips also when reimbursing those amounts contributed by members for certain projects? Do we need to keep track of the payment slips as well? Also, if you don't have some of the bills, what happens then during an audit? If you don't have bills, how can we sort of compensate and go about at it?
Payment slips, obviously, you need to maintain. See, there's no hard and fast rule on what documents. Basically, it's everything that you have, you need to keep, right? And on the questions on payment vouchers, I don't see an alternative unless you can get the auditor to write to the specific company and get a confirmation saying that this event took place or something to that effect, which is going to be a cumbersome process. If there's going to be 4 or 5 invoices missing, it's not practical for you to write, and that highly unlikely that other party would respond. So it will be like a similar thing that I think we discussed this a few minutes back. It will be reported as a bad practice, and it will be reported in the audit report saying that these practices have not been followed and the documents have not been maintained by the club, which is obviously it's a black mark on the committee who is
who conducted the business.
Is it possible to give like a letter of sorts or like a
Harsha, one moment. Harsha, if you can explain to them about the qualified and unqualified reports on audit.
Okay. So basically what happens in an audit is if the auditor is satisfied, all the controls are in place and the committee has done a good job and all the records have been maintained properly, the auditor expresses an opinion which is called an unqualified opinion. Right? So basically the auditor would say the financial statements give a true and fair view of the financial affairs of the club. So, but if the auditor has a reservation on some areas to say, like, let's say the expenses were not supported by payment vouchers, right? And if it's not very significant, we would go on to say that, look, expenses amounting to so much were not supported by invoices or receipts or whatever, except for that matter, the rest of it is fine. And if it's so bad, we can say the accounts do not give a true and fair view, right? Saying that the accounts are totally wrong. We can't check anything in these accounts is basically the other opinion we give. So in an instance, a few vouchers are missing, I would expect that to say that except for these vouchers missing, we would say the final statements give a true and fair view of the statement of affairs.
Okay. Speaking of these bills, can we have them in a digital format as well rather than hard copies? Is it allowed?
It was not allowed a few years back. Now I think people are accepting emails and everything is coming in. So digital copies or whatever it is, as long as it can be authenticated to be from a genuine source, right? So you can't create something and someone PDF and then give it. It has to be like from a genuine source where it can be traced back to the authenticity. I don't think the auditor will have a problem.
Right. What happens if there's an issue where the previous year's committee does not convey the audited accounts to the incoming year?
I don't think such a situation can arise, because by the time the new committee takes over the AGM, you need to have the audited accounts presented. This one of the, I think, the constitutional requirements of the club.
Yes.
So if you don't have audit accounts, you can't have the AGM, and the whole constitution fails. So technically, that is not an option that you all have. You have to have audit accounts submitted at the AGM.
There's also a question regarding elaborating a little on the budget format. If you can quickly touch upon that as well to give a clearer idea for our attractors.
Okay. So the simplest thing, if you want to do a budget, would be to what we call a zero-based budget. You go to the previous year, see what are the expenditures that happen, right? Then you look at saying that, okay, in the future, it's going to be, whether it's going to be the same or you're going to have a difference. Up to last year, most of the last, say, 10 years would have been the same thing. We do the almost our expenditures and income would be from similar sources. Then you can expect, okay, we'll have a 10% increment or 5% reduction. That small adjustments are made and the expectation is created. But like similar case to this year, if that is the case, then you, like what I was explaining before, maybe your travel expenditure comes down, your data expenditure goes up. So those have to be factored in. So it would be similar to a profit and loss account, right? So you develop expectation for all your expenditures and your income. That would be your budget. And the committee has to, on a rolling basis, compare the actuals against the budget to see whether their expectations are in line. And if they're way off, what I said earlier, you need to revise your expectations. The format of a budget, if I'm not mistaken, was given in the Rotaract Club handbook. I did not include in my presentation, but I am sure most of you all have that handbook was circulated.
Yeah, this is a sample.
Yes, the sample budget was incorporated into that handbook. Yes.
All right, thank you, Rotarian. Moving on, there's a quick question on the possibility to use admin expenses on project and vice versa, project expenses and vice versa. If there is a emergency of sorts, can we use it for the other?
I would say that as long as it is approved by the club committee or club board, the management team, and that is minuted accordingly, that can be done. For example, say there is a certain project where you are running a little short of funds, and then in the admin budget, say you have, say from the installation or whatever project you have done, you have got a good surplus, into the club, and that has been deposited, and that money is lying in the administration account. It was not specifically meant for a particular identified project as such, but the board knows that this particular project needs these funds. If they are satisfied that the rest of the funds that they had was spent properly and not misused, then the board can decide that out of our general funds that we have, that so much be transferred to such and such a project account. That is permitted, but it should be properly authorized by the management.
This is just continuing on that. The other way around will not be permitted, right? From project accounts, I cannot use for admin purposes, even for temporary basis, right?
That's true. That's quite right. Yeah, not the other way about it. Because people donate money to achieve a certain objective in supporting the community or something like that. So they don't want that to go against club administration in any way. That's very true. Thanks for reminding me about it.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Rotarians. So the next question is, there is a bit of a fee and it's a bit of a burden for most of the club, the audit fee. So is there a way that we can work around this?
We'll ask the current auditor what he has.
If any of your parents are auditors, you can ask them to audit your accounts.
Rotarian Harsha and PJ, this I think I can speak for the clubs on behalf of that. So we have clubs of different nature and different caliber, and some of the clubs they might not even operate expenses more than 30,000 rupees per year. Right, when you really look at it, there can be instances like that. So for them, having an expense of more than 5,000, 10,000 rupees, spent on like an auditor, it could be like also a problem, because for the fundamental reason, there are some clubs that do not charge their membership, right? For the institute-based clubs, for that matter. So is there any possibility that Rotary could assist us in terms of having a partnership with certain auditors, or any collaboration that could go into that?
I was under the impression the district auditor was supposed to be utilized for Rotaract clubs. I thought they were getting a special pricing done. I'm not too sure of that. I thought the district auditor was supposed to do for the entire Rotaract clubs. That was my understanding.
But in Harsha, so that is for the district account. That's for the district account.
That is for Rotaract district account, not for the Rotaract clubs.
Okay.
No, I think, I don't have a solution as such, for the reduction of the fees or in any way. But as I said, if it is difficult for anyone to share the cost or in any way, as I said, as a last resort, you may have to go to a member who is not involved in the club decision-making process, and as long as he understands accounts and he has some financial kind of background, maybe that person can do the audit in this extreme situation. But normally, when you go to a sole proprietor type of audit firm, usually the cost will be far, far less than what a normal big firm would charge. So I think it's better that and now they are generally scattered all over. I think in most towns in Sri Lanka, you get these small audit firms. And when they see, and when they know that this is a more kind of a charitable organization, also they will not charge generally won't go for the normal fee structure. They will give certain concessions. So I think they have to first try their best to get it done outside. And if all fail, only I think you have to resort to that last solution that I mentioned. That's my view on that.
But if you if you are putting a global grant application and if you get the project funds, legally foundation allows 5% contingencies that you can put the audit fee and get it audited.
Yeah, that is for the global grant audit, yeah.
Right. So the next question is with regards to current accounts. What are the benefits of using a current account as to a savings account, and how there is difficulty sometimes in opening a current account? How do we go about it? If there's a minimum deposit requirement, there should be someone to introduce. So how do we go about at this? And what are the benefits of using a current account as to a savings account? And is there still a possibility to use a savings account for project accounts rather?
I know one thing for global grants, they don't encourage having savings accounts because they do not want clubs to earn any interest on these accounts, because the funds belong to the Rotary Foundation. The So many factors come in, as Harsha correctly explained, how to effect these controls of having 2 or 3 signatories to a check. I mean, if you replace with a savings account, you can't draw checks there. As far as I know, I don't know whether there are any kinds of savings accounts which permit check out drawing, but I don't think it's a substitute. It's really a more necessity that you have to have a current account, because even these payments, what say the foundation says is, I think it was covered in Harsha's presentation as well. They say try to make all your payments by check to the people who render you services or provides goods. Only in the extreme case that with the approval of the management that you can pay by cash. So that is a kind of restriction that they have because of all kinds of malpractices that can go on. And also it's not easy to control. It's more vulnerable to malpractices dealing in cash. That's the reason why they say whatever collections you have, put it into the bank account. Then draw it out if you have to. So, anything else, Harsha? I missed out.
That's about it. I think it's mainly on the control to make sure that the payments are properly managed and monitored. Savings account, it becomes that much more difficult for you to control and monitor. That's about it.
Coming back to getting audits done from your parents and whatnot, is it necessary to get a full audit report from an accountant, or is a signature from a chartered accountant sufficient?
This will depend as far as I know, on the Rotaract district bylaws. Now I know that say in Sri Lanka, I think we generally prefer the audit, but internationally, I know that the word used in the RI bylaw is they use the word review rather than using the word audit. Now this leads us to another chapter, what is a review and what is an audit. That's a long story, but an audit is a much more comprehensive thing, which ends with the most important thing, their opinion, whether the accounts give a true and fair view. That statement or phrase will not be there if it is a review. They will say, we have reviewed the club's accounts with the books and records produced to us and certify that they are in conformity therewith, or something like that. They don't say it is correct. Whether half the collections are not recorded there, they don't know. But that is not verified there. It is only a review. It's a very limited kind of examination that they do compared to a normal audit. So I think audit is normally preferred, but this is something which you have to take up even with the district. I think in whether they would permit a review type of examination by an independent party. Beyond that, I can't say anything.
Right, okay. There's also a request to explain a little bit more on preparing a bank reconciliation on what needs to be included in payables and receivables exactly.
Okay. Bank reconciliation is nothing to do with payables or receivables. In a bank reconciliation, what you're trying to do is basically reconcile our cash book balance with the bank statement balance. So the usual differences arise from either unpresented checks or deposits which are made into the bank not got realized. So for example, I have written a check to say for 10,000 rupees and issued to someone, but he does not give it to the bank. in my accounts, I would have written 10,000 rupees has been paid. So in my bank balance, if I had 100,000, I would have reduced 10,000 and showed that 90,000 rupees is in my bank. But when the bank statement comes at the end of the month, the bank statement would reflect 100,000. Why? Because the other person has not encashed his check. So I'm trying to reconcile the difference. So the difference is the unpresented check. So effectively what I would do is start with the bank statement balance of 100,000 and say unrealized check 10,000 minus, and then that brings me to my cash book balance. Same way, if it is unrealized deposits, I need to add it back on. So that's how the bank reconciliation is prepared. So what it ensures is that basically all my transactions have been recorded and it reconciles with what the bank is saying. So both the bank and I will be on the same page.
Sometimes you find the bank also charging certain bank fees or charges. Now those we don't know is the bank that will debit our account. So it may not appear in our cash book. So again, the same thing the other way about, and they'll say bank balance so much. Then if you are trying to reconcile with the cash book, we'll have to say bank charges not recorded in cash book or something, and then adjust the balance to tally with the cash book. So ultimately what we check is how long these differences are going to be outstanding. They should not go from month to month to month and go on for a long time. Then that means there is some issue, some problem. Either some, say, deposit not realized for a long time means either something has gone wrong. It can't just happen. So the idea of this is bank statement, bank reconciliation has to be reviewed by the club independent person looking for such things, whether these are all current or whether they are old entries. If it is old entries, it has to be investigated. That's what it means.
Okay. Yeah, I think that was a very long list of questions. We do have more coming in, but due to the time restriction, I think we took like half an hour extra. So let's wrap up this session. Thank you once again, all the Rotarians, for clearing all our doubts. I think that was, like I said, a brilliant few sessions. We had a lot of doubts clarified. Thank you again for bearing with us and for answering all our questions. And with that being said, I think we have now reached the end of the training session. I would now like to invite the Rotaract District Sergeant at Arms, Rotaractor, past President, immediate past President Nipun, to deliver the vote of thanks. Over to you.
Thank you, Satma. Very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I hope our Rotaractors are able to clarify the almost all the gray area about financial management. So without taking much time, I would take this opportunity to thank many individuals without whom today's event would not have been a success. Rotary District Governor, Rotarian past President Ajit Veerasinghe, Chairman of the People's Bank, Mr. Sanjeeva Rajapaksha, and Rotary District Youth Service Chair, Rotarian past President Dr. Rohan Tatukorada, past Rotary District Governor, Rotarian Krish Rajendra, past Rotary District Governor, Rotarian Tisse Bandaranaike, and partner of KPMG Sri Lanka, Rotarian Harsha Rajendran. Thank you everyone, all the Rotarians, for your valuable time. Also, without your presence, this event would not have been a success. And also, we can't forget this individual, also Rotarian immediate past President Satma Jayasinghe, for moderating this event. And also our very own DRR, Rotaract past President Kasun Sikera, and also the District Steering Committee for organizing this event like this to benefit the entire Rotaract community. And last but not least, all the Rotaractors who participated today for this event. And thank you once again everyone for your immense support extended to make this event success. Thank you so much and good night. Stay safe.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Nipun, once again, thank you everyone for joining in, for your interest, your enthusiasm. Respected Rotarians, thank you for taking the time off, for answering our questions and clarifying all our doubts. Thank you so much, everyone. Stay safe and hope you have a great night.
Thank you very much. I wish you the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
See you.
See you.
See you.